Okay, our topic is Purim. You know what's the weirdest thing about Purim? What's the weirdest thing about Purim? And it's truly an anomaly like you never saw. Purim is the only sefer in Tanakh that points out that what's written in the Megillah, the Goyim have in their own history books. And it's impossible to find Purim in the Goyish history books. It don't exist. It's weird. It's very weird. The end of the Megillah is Alehem Ksuvim, Alehem Ksuvim Al Sefer Madaya Paras Lamalchim Madaya Paras. The Navi says that the story of Purim is recorded in the kings of Media and Persia. Now, of course, the reason it says that is because there was a taina against the Megillah. There was a taina against the Megillah that is going to make the Goyim hate us because we're showing off, you know. And the answer was, what do you mean? They also have a record of it. We're not even sure where Shushan Abida is. We're not sure which Persian king is Achashverosh. Everybody says it's a guy named Xerxes, who was killed, I think, by Alexander the Great. But we're not sure. There's so many uncertainties in this whole story. But the Goyish version of history and the Jewish version of history in this part of history is really, really, it's hard to reconcile. The Goyim have another 186 years of history that we don't have. We hold the first Beis HaMikdash stood 410 years. The second Beis HaMikdash stood for 420 years. And between the first and second Beis HaMikdash is 70 years. That's it. That's how the Psukim goes. That's how the Gemara goes. Goyim claimed that the second Beis HaMikdash stood for 600 years, much longer. And that the Persian Empire lasted a few hundred years, not a few decades. Because the way the Jewish history goes, you have Mitzrayim, even though they're just a hiccup. Then you have Bovel. Then you have Modai. And then you have Poros. And then you have Yavan. And Modai and Poros is hard to separate, but they're still two different things. So you have Bovel, Modai, Poros, Yavan in how much time? In 100 years. And all of these empires ruled the whole world. Nebuchadnezzar ruled the whole world. Babel ruled the whole world. Nebuchadnezzar ruled the whole world to such an extent that his dream was that his descendants would rule the world forever. That's why he made that statue. He was hoping that the power of Babel would last forever, and it didn't work out that way, okay? Vashti, who was the wife of Achashverosh, was the daughter of Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar. So according to the Jewish version of history, empires that ruled the world rose and fell in a generation, mamish 20 years, 30 years, very, very rapidly. Now Persia, Modai and Poros, that Yavesh, the son of Achashverosh, gave us permission, in quotations, to build the second Beis HaMikdash. And according to our account, that's the end of the 70 years. But mamish after the Yavesh was Alexander Smugdel, Alexander the Great. In the Goyish history, there's so many more generations. And nobody can find Purim. Where's Purim? It's really, really weird. It's really weird. The Torah says that the only reason we're allowing ourselves to write the Megillah, and we're not afraid that the Goyim are going to be insulted by our arrogance and our showing off and our hubris, is because they already have it in their own books. Where are those books? Where are those books? Where are the Sfarim for Malchei Madai Uparas? You and me, not both. Now, there's a simple answer to the question. It doesn't answer I'm supposed to be in here, right? There's a simple answer to the question. It doesn't answer the question completely, but it does give you a little bit of an insight. There's two things you have to know about history. Beklau. Number one, using even Alexander of Macedonia as a model, very rarely was history written in real time. Most historians wrote history 100 years after the fact. We have the history of Alexander of Macedonia, but it was written 100 years after he died. Nobody wrote what was happening. You didn't think to write it. It was happening. But if it would have been written when it happened, it would be accurate. 100 years later, it's what are the stories that we still have? And there's another very true fact about history. Who writes the history? The winners, right? There's one exception to that rule. that the history of the Civil War was written by the American South. So that's why they make themselves so great and so powerful and so righteous and so blah, 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 blah. Because the Northerners didn't care to write the history. But Beklal, history is written by the winners. And when histories write the winners, when winners write history, they write the version of history that makes them look good. In other words, there's a bias against recording facts. When you write history, you want to make yourself look good. I mean, the masters of the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians wrote history. They're all over their walls, you know, those hieroglyphics. I don't know if you know, but they know how to read those hieroglyphics, something called the Rosetta Stone. Those pictures of pigeons and snakes and whatever else, they're actually alphabet, they're letters. And people figured out how to read those hieroglyphics, and now we were able to read ancient Egyptian. We can read those, what they were on the walls. And they're all about war, and every war they win. Oh, they're always winning. They didn't always win, but the losses are not in the walls. It's very simple. So you get a distorted version of history, you get a partial version of history. It's not all false, but it's not what happened. So it's very reasonable to say, as an answer to this question, that the story of Purim was erased from the history books the moment people didn't like Yidden. Achashverosh wrote it down. His wife was a Jew. It didn't take long for them to say, we don't like those people anymore, and then it disappeared from history books. It's very reasonable to assume that the Megillas Esther can be taken literally. The story was written at the time that it happened, and within 50 years or 70 years or 100 years of the story being written, it was decided by some person that, this is not, it doesn't make us look so good for whatever reasons, and the history books were destroyed or buried. Will they find them one day? Who knows? It depends on how much the Eibishter wants to play hide and seek with us and give us reasons to have questions on the Torah. But this is one of those things which is in your face. The only place in Tanakh where there's a clear articulation of the fact that what we have in our books, they have in their books, is the only story that you can't find any place in their books. It's one of the ironies of the Purim story. It really is. It's an irony of the Purim story.
Do you find any of their books?
Tons of them. There's so much history for the Persian Empire. Tons. Faket, that's the whole Taina. There's no... Where is it? They have 250 years of kings. We got 30 years of kings. How does that work? Literally, they have the Persian Empire lasting for a very long time. And that the last Persian king was Xerxes, if I'm not mistaken. We have our history is crunched into a very, very small amount of time. It's very hard to explain, but the Rebbe takes it literally. The Rebbe doesn't buy into this idea that you have to explain the Torah. The Rebbe holds that the version of history which is found in the Gemara based on the Psukim is actual. 410, 70, 420, that's the Ganze Maise, and you have to crush the Persian Empire into a much shorter period of time. You have to bring the Greek Empire much, much closer to the Babylonians and to the Medians and to the Persians. It happens very, very quickly, according to the Torah. Teshbal Peh. But this is one of those interesting things about the Purim story which makes you pause. Where is it, Anyway, I don't bring this up to make you into Apokursim. I bring this up to point out this irony, this really funny phenomena, that it's very hard to find who's Achashverosh, who's Mordechai, who's Esther, who's Haman. Historically, who are these people? Who are they? Begashmias, who were they? And of course, the story of Purim is one of the most fateful events in our history. The story of Purim, one of the most fateful events in our history, because Haman wanted to kill every Jew on the planet, lahashmid larig liyabid, to wipe out every Jew off the face of the earth. And Hashem made an unbelievable mess. This whole sequence of events with Esther becoming the queen, Vashti being killed and Esther becoming the queen, and Mordechai sitting at the palace gates, and Bigson and Seresh, it all worked out so beautifully. And the classic Purim, the classic Purim adage, V'napechu. What does V'napechu means? Everything the Seine Yisrael tries works against him. Everything the Jew hater uses as a mechanism to affect his hatred for the Jewish people turns out to be a great nest for the Jewish people, beginning with the Purim, with the Geidel itself. Like the Gemara says, that Haman did not know that Ba'esach Chedesh Neilad Moshe Rabbeinu. And just for the record, you should know, and people talked about this, that the 10 sons of Haman, 10 sons of Haman? Yeah? The 10 sons of Haman have 3 big letters. And I think the big letters are Tav Shin Zayin, either Tav Shin Zayin or Tav Shin Vav. Tav Shin Zayin. Tav Shin Zayin is 1947. In 1947, they hung 10 Nazis. They were supposed to hang 11, and one of them took his life. And somebody once told me, I have a hard time believing it, but I'd love to say it anyway. At the last of the 10, as he was choking to death, he said, Purim fest. You've heard this. It freaks you out. But they killed 6 million Jews. They killed 6 million Jews. According to the Purim story, the Holocaust was mamish the same story. Haman wanted to kill every Jew on the planet. He wanted to kill every Jew on the planet. So this is intrigue. This is me thinking out loud. It's so fascinating. But what is the story of Purim really? What's the story of Purim? The story of Purim has two big components. The first is the tragedy, and the second is the miracle. And each one of them has a lot of intrigue. It's interesting if you think about the tragedy and the miracle. And I'm going to make a proposal to you girls. If you have time and you're interested. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, has an essay which is very long, which he said and he wrote in Purim 1941, the second Purim he was in America. It's available in Yiddish in the Sichas of Frierdiker Rebbe, which have now been translated into English, although the English translation so poorly represents the lachluchis, the moisture, the joy, the life of the Frierdiker Rebbe's language. But you can read it in English. It's a very long story, it's maybe 20, 30 pages. The Frierdiker Rebbe tells the Purim story in 1941. He sat by a Farbrengen in his house and he told the Purim story. But he tells the story as a political drama. It's in Yiddish and it's translated into English. I'm sure it's in Hebrew also. You have to just find it. I would really encourage you to get a hold of it. The previous Rebbe Sichas have been translated in English by SIE, by Sichas in English. You can buy them. You don't have to buy the whole set. Get this one book, read this Sicha, because it's fascinating. Purim 1941. The Frierdiker Rebbe tells the Purim story as a political drama. And what freaks you out is the way he writes the story, it could have been happening then. The story is written as if it's happening in 1941 in Germany. In other words, it's very suggestive. It insinuates, it leads you to certain conclusions that make you realize how the Purim story didn't happen once, but that the Purim story keeps happening again and again and again. The tragedy of the Purim story is where the Jewish people decided we finally made it. The Goy accepts me. I'm like him. It was the dream of most Jews who came to the United States of America to be considered good Americans. It was the dream of every German Jew to be accepted into German society as a good German. In Russia, they never got that chance. They hated him too much. In Poland and Galicia, they never got that chance. They hated him too much. But in Germany, in France, in England, the United States of America, modern countries, Western countries, democratic countries, there was this sentiment, there was this feeling that we can be like everybody else. We're not different. We've been accepted.
Is the Frierdiker represented?
Huh?
Is the Frierdiker represented?
More or less, yeah, of course. This is the pshat in the psukim. The tragedy of the Purim story is the Jewish people said, we don't have to be nebuchs anymore. We don't have to live in the shtetl. We don't have to be weird and different and depressed. We can be like anybody else. We can live in nice houses and wear nice clothes and eat good food. And we can be friends with the Goy. And the truth of the matter is, what Haman says. Okay, I'm going to wait for you to finish talking. I don't know who's talking. I hear a voice. I can't see, which is good, but I hear a voice. When that voice stops whispering, I will continue. Haman says, Yeshnai am echad. Taich, there is a nation of one. Yeshnai am echad, there is a nation of one. But how does the Chazal translate Yeshnai am echad? Anybody know? The nation of one is asleep, from the word Yoshan, sleeping. Yoshain, not Yoshan. Okay? But Yeshnai am echad means there is a nation of difference, like from the word Shinui. Yeshnai am echad, the nation of one is different than all nations. Haman says this. And this is the eternal truth. 100 times in our history, Jews said, enough being weird, enough being different, enough being persecuted. Let's be like everybody else and let's assimilate. There's a small problem. There's a very, very small problem with this attitude of assimilation and being accepted and being like everybody else. Does anybody know what the problem is? Does anybody know what the problem is? There is actually a God. I just told you a great piece of revelation. There is actually a God. And He actually, He chose one nation, and it happens to be us. We are absolutely different. And when we stop appreciating that we're different, and we think we don't have to be different anymore, this is America, this is the West, this is the age of the United Nations, we're like every other nation, and we want to assimilate, we just want the guy to like us, we want the guy to look at us and say, yeah, you're as good as me. We can sit at the same table, we can sit in the same bar, we can drink the same whiskey, and eat the same food, and forgive me for saying it, marry the same women and men. How many times did it happen to the Jewish people historically? It didn't happen a lot, but it happened. Happened in the golden age of Spain. It's happening now. It's the ghost of assimilation. It's the Rebbe calls it the American Holocaust. And the American Holocaust has killed as many Jews as Hitler did. But they died slowly and painlessly. They just fell asleep. It's the ghost of assimilation. Jews are no different than anybody else. And what is the tragedy of the Purim story? That there's always going to be a Haman who's going to remind you that you're different. There's always going to be a Haman who's going to remind you that you're different. And of course, you guys understand very well that Haman is not Haman. Haman is a Rosh Hashanah has to be killed. But what he is speaking is Abish's words. Every time Jews try to assimilate, the anti-Semites arise. We always blame anti-Semitism on the fact that we wear different hats and wear different kapotas, and we wear sheitlach, and we eat kosher, and we don't mix with our neighbors. So we said, let's get rid of all those things. Let's be very, very social. Let's be like everybody else. Let's be good Germans. And Haman comes from Germany, not from Russia. Haman comes from the place of assimilation. That's the tragedy of the Purim story. The tragedy of the Purim story is that the Jewish people said, we really are sick and tired of being the chosen nation. We're sick and tired of being different. We're sick and tired of everyone looking at us like we're nuts at the very least, and killing us at the very most, and making fun of us or making us suffer in between those two extremes. Let's just be like everybody else. How does it play out in the story itself? Two things. The Gemara says two things that explain this tendency of the Jewish people towards assimilation. The first is Hishtachavu Letzelem, Nebuchadnezzar, right, who was the empire before the Persians, the Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar had a son named Belshazzar. Belshazzar was killed. Belshazzar's daughter is Vashti. And according to our version of the story, she's not a great-great-granddaughter or Gilgal, she's Mamish's daughter. It happened very, very rapidly. Bavel, Poras, her mother, happened very rapidly. And Nebuchadnezzar made a tzelem of all of gold. And then in the dream, Daniel saw that the head was gold, and the body was bronze, and the legs were something else, and the feet were wood. In other words, it wasn't going to last. Nebuchadnezzar wanted his kingdom to last till Mashiach, and the Navi told him, sorry, sir, it's not going to last till Mashiach, it's going to last till a hiccup. It was gone in 50 years, it was over. 40 years, however long it lasted. But Nebuchadnezzar made a statue of gold, and he made everybody bow to it. Now there's a machlokes in the Gemara, whether it was Avodah Zarah or not. Some people hold it wasn't Avodah Zarah, which is why a lot of people allowed themselves to bow to it. Some people say it was Avodah Zarah, but nevertheless they did it. But only 300 Jews didn't bow to that tzelem. They bowed to the tzelem, they gave in to Nebuchadnezzar. Now if they would bow and cross their fingers, if they would bow and say, I don't want to get killed, no. But if you bow to the tzelem of Nebuchadnezzar and you believe in Trump, I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. You believe in Nebuchadnezzar. This is the tragedy. You didn't have to always deal with the Goyish leaders, always. But when he becomes your Messiah, when he becomes Mashiach, when he becomes the solution to all your problems, The goy is not going to let. Haman will not let it stand. Haman will not let it stand. Haman will not let it stand. That was the first Aveda. What was the second Aveda? Huh? Nenu misudasei shalei seirasha. The Aveda was that they went to Achashverosh's party. Now you could claim that they went to the party because they were forced. You could say that. Some Sfarim hold that. But who said you have to enjoy it? You gotta go, you gotta go. You have to eat, you have to eat. You have to drink, but you have to enjoy it. You know who I am? I'm the Jew that Achashverosh shook. He shook my hand. He gave me a piece of birthday cake. Huh? Achashverosh arranged that the food at the Suda should be kosher. And the wine at the feast should be kosher. Kitzayin ish v'ish. I just looked up the Gemara this morning. That ish v'ish goes on Haman and Mordechai. The food that was served at Achashverosh's feast was so rich that it satisfied Haman's needs and Mordechai's needs and everybody in between. It was glad kosher. It was Lubavitcher Shechita, it was Badatz, it was Lamed K, it was Crown Ice K. Had both achshedim on the same shtickle flesh. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they got a super mashgiach to make them kosher, lakula alma. It was 100% kosher. And maybe you had to go, but who said you had to enjoy it? The enjoying it was an assimilation. The enjoying it was forgetting what Haman said, Yesh Nayamecha, the Jews are different. This is the tragedy. What's the miracle? The miracle is that on that occasion they woke up and they did tshuva. Like in the story of Nineveh. You know the story of Nineveh? You know the story of Yonah? They did tshuva. They did tshuva, and what happened next? Hashem forgave them. He didn't turn Nineveh over. He saved Nineveh. Hashem saved the people and the land and the Behema Rabbo, all of the animals that lived there. There were 120,000 people living in Nineveh, which is considered 120,000 people in a city is nothing. But in the ancient world, there was a massive city. Today, you have 120,000 people in one neighborhood in Brooklyn. But in the olden time, there was an enormous number of people, and the Eibishter did not kill them. Why? Because they did tshuva. Correct? So Yidden did tshuva. The Yidden did tshuva. And what was the tshuva? Girls, you got to appreciate the tshuva. You have to appreciate the tshuva. And of course, at the center of this tshuva is the children. Mordechai gathered the kids and he learned with them Torah. And like it says in Sfarim, he taught them Hilchas Kmitza. It was Pesach. So he taught them the halachas of a korban omer, which you bring in the Beis HaMikdash. They were living in Golos and there was no Beis HaMikdash. It was not Negel and Maiseh. Mordechai Dafke learned with those children something which was just for the sake of learning Torah. It wasn't teaching them about Mesiras Nefesh. It wasn't teaching them about davening in the morning. It was talking about something which was not Negel and Maiseh. It did not have any practical value because he was teaching them Torah just to teach them Torah. And they defied Haman. The tshuva girls obviously was that they corrected their ways. But what lay at the heart of that correction of ways? What lay at the heart of that correction of ways? And the answer to that question was the admission that a Jew and a Gentile cannot mix just like water and oil cannot mix. They realized that the attitude of being accepted by the Goy, the attitude of assimilating with the Goy, even if you have kosher food, and even if you have kosher wine, is a huge sin. It may not be a sin on the list of Avedis when you go into Gan Eden and to Gehenim, but it's a sin of hashkafa. It's a sin of attitude. A Jew needs to know that he's different than the Gentile, and if he ever forgets, finish the sentence. Huh? The Gentile is going to remind him. This happened again and again and again and again and again. It happened in the last generation. When a Yid thinks, I'm fine like everybody else, comes again, the Goy, and he's the one who reminds you that you're different. He is the one who reminds you that you're different. You have to think about this. He is the one that reminds you that you're different. And in that story, in the Megillah, Yidden Chapsach, they realized it. They realized it because Mordechai made them realize it. He didn't just say, do tshuva for going to the party. He said, do tshuva for thinking that you and the guy are the same. Get out of your head the idea that a Yid and a Goy are the same. You're different. You're different. You know, people used to ask the Rebbe about intermarriage. The Rebbe dealt with intermarriage all the time. People came to the Rebbe with YEHUDIs, with intermarriage stories. I don't know if there's a famous story with the Rebbe dollars, which you can see the video of. This is not a story about intermarriage, it's a story about a Kohen who wanted to marry a Grusha. It was a Kohen who wanted to marry a divorcee, and he was, what's the heter for doing everything in the Torah? I fell in love. Because I fell in love, I can hurt my wife, I can hurt my family, I can hurt my children. I fell in love. I fell in love with Mamater Allah Vedas. It's such a piece of shikr. It's such a childish, but falling in love is matter. I fell in love. What do you want me to do? I fell in love. What should fall out of love? Mishigana, you're married to somebody else, you have children, but in America, everybody understands that a person falls in love. There's a mishigas, it's a disease in America. Intelligent people will tell you with a straight face, why did you divorce with your husband? I fell in love with somebody else. What in heaven's name does that mean? You're married, you have obligations. Love is matter out everything. You fall in love, ooh, love, ain't clinical. And the whole love is such a fantasy. It's such a lie. It's a dream. It's a fairy tale that's good for little kids in the 4th grade. And the old men and women use it as an explanation for destroying, burning down their house, burning down their children, ruining their everything. Why? I fell in love. You need a clapping cup, that's what you need. And a kick in the pants and a wake-up call. I fell in love. Ain't clinical. It's such a stupidity. You guys are going to go on shlichus. You'll see how right I am. People will tell you with a straight face that I can ruin their own life and other people's lives. And the explanation is I fell in love. Take a stick and whack him in the head. Shigging it. Go back to your wife. Grow up. I don't care. You feel you have responsibilities. Anyway, the rant is now officially over. I hope you all heard it and recorded it and put it in your hard drive. What do they call it? The hardware. And now I'll go back to my story. This Kohen was going to marry Grusha and nobody could talk to him. And he came to the Rebbe Dal. A Yid brought him, a Shliach brought him. And the Rebbe told him, there's a video, I am jealous of you. Because I'm not a Kohen. And I never wanted to marry a Grusha. I never had the test that you have. But if you pass this test, you will have done something that I was never able to do because I never had this nisayon. And the Rebbe got to him. The Rebbe's words touched him. He didn't marry the Grusha. He's made it his mission. Whenever he hears about people who are going to marry Jews and not supposed to, he takes this video. A number of couples were broken up because of this one. This man goes around and he tells his story. He was going to marry a Grusha. And the Rebbe said to him, you have a test that I never had. So you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah which I was never able to do. And this person has broken up a number of intermarriage possibilities and Kohen and marrying Grushas, showing them the video and telling them his story. You understand? A Yid has to know he's different than a Goy. Finished. It doesn't mean we hate the Goy. It doesn't mean the Goy is bad. It doesn't mean we're better. It means we're different. So getting back to my point, the Rebbe dealt with many instances of intermarriage. Many times the Rebbe either met couples or their parents or wherever it was, where a boy wants to marry a girl out of faith, the whole thing. Does anybody know how the Rebbe argued against intermarriage? Does anybody know how the Rebbe argued against intermarriage? Does anybody? Nobody knows? Not one of you? When someone came to them, why shouldn't they marry a shiksa? I'm in love. I'm in love. Ain't klinikat. I'm in love. The Rebbe did not say it's an Aveda. The Rebbe didn't say your children are going to be lost to the Jewish tradition forever. The Rebbe said your personalities are different. The marriage is doomed to fail. The Rebbe said this to hundreds of couples. A Jew and a Gentile have a different personality. Now, try that. Try that. You try it. If you were in a Chabad house and you know a boy who's a Jew wants to marry a shiksa, you say, no, you have different personalities. What's he going to tell you? I dated 50 Jewish girls. I hate all of them. They're such control freaks. They remind me of my mother. She's so sweet. She doesn't tell me what to do. That's what Yiddish boys say, yeah. And what did the Yiddish girls say? Yeah. The Jewish boys are so strong and they're so bullheaded. They want things their way. The goy, whatever I want, he does. That's how it goes. The Jewish girls explain why they like goyim. The Jewish boys explain why they like shiksas. And the Rebbe is saying it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You know, Shlomo Schwartz, Olav Shalom, with the Shliach of the Rebbe, his whole business, his whole shlichus, was that a Jew should marry a Jewess, and he would say those words. He didn't fancy it, he just repeated the Rebbe's words. When a Jew marries a goy, a Jewish boy marries a goyish girl, a Jewish girl marries a goyish boy, the reason it's not going to work is they're different personalities. Now you don't see it right away, but it comes out eventually. And that's the Rebbe's argument. You know what that's the Rebbe's argument? Why didn't the Rebbe say it's against religion, you're going to be lost to the truth, you're going to be cut off from the chain? The Rebbe could have given all the guilt arguments that the grandmother gives the grandson. Why did the Rebbe give this argument? Take a wild guess. Huh? Why did the Rebbe give this answer? Anybody? Because it's the truth. Because it's the truth.
It's not the only truth.
It's the only truth. A Yid and a non-Yid have different personalities. Every other explanation is a lie.
No, well, the fact that a Jewish person marrying a non-Jewish kids won't be Jewish, that's also the truth.
But he doesn't care.
It's a true thing.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. This is true. You're marrying a person because you think you're compatible. You should know you're incompatible. A Yid has to marry a Yid and a Goy has to marry a Goy, period. Now, it doesn't say any place in Hilchas Torah that a Chinese Goy can't marry an African American Goy, and that an Indian Goy cannot marry a German Goy, and that a Polish Goy cannot marry a Spanish Goy, but a Yid and a Goy of different natures. And that's what the Rebbe would say. Because the Rebbe, you should listen to Shlomo Schwartz. The Rebbe never lied. He never lied. He always told the whole truth to whomever he was talking, whether they liked it or not. I have a story which will literally give you goosebumps. And I heard Rabbi Schwartz tell the story, and I also saw it in the book. There was a man named Jan Pierce. Jan Pierce's parents were frum. My mother was a Shemoneh Shabbos. He became an opera singer. He was very not frum. And he became later, at the end of his life, became very close to the Rebbe. And he had a son who was married to a shiksa. And she had Goyish grandchildren. And it ate him up. And he talked to the Rebbe about it. And there's a number of stories. And one of the stories was that he told the Rebbe that his non-Jewish grandchildren are going to a Jewish Talmud Torah and they're going to learn about their tradition. You know what the Rebbe told him? In Yechidus, pray face to face. Why are you confusing them? They're not Jewish. It was like a dagger. He was a Jewish man. His son married a Goy. He was killing him. So he convinced his son to give his non-Jewish grandchildren a Jewish education. And the Rebbe said, let them be Goyim. Leave them alone. The Rebbe said that to a man to his face. And the Rebbe, of course, had other people later sweeten the pot. The Rebbe knew how much it hurt. But the Rebbe never lied to anybody. And you know why a Jew should marry a non-Jew? Because it's not going to work. A Jew and a non-Jew of a different nature. The story of Purim is the ultimate prototype, is the ultimate mashal for that idea. The tragedy of the Purim story is the Jew's idea that he's the same as the Goy. And finally, Yesh lanu achos bebeis hamalch, we literally have a sister in the king's palace. Esther Amalke, v'chulu. I'm not going to say it again by mistake. I want to keep Freud out of this conversation. Okay? And you have to know a Yid and a Goy is andish. Now, Yid and Goyim have great relationships. And the Rebbe teaches us it's our responsibility to teach Goyim, Shava Mitzvahs B'nai Neach, and that's what Mashiach is going to come. Don't kid yourself. But the idea that the Goy likes you, you're different. You're different. Hashem made you different. You're different like two species of animals are different. You're different. You don't realize it, but you're different. And the tragedy of Purim, which happened over and over and over again, when we forgot that, tragically, the Goy reminded us. But we got it. Mordechai got us to hear it. The solution, the Rebbe says the the solution to our problems was not to use our political connections. The Rebbe said Mordechai was Yesh B'Shar HaMelech. Mordechai sat at Achashverosh's gate. He was a very powerful man. When the Gezerah came down, he should have made an appointment with Achashverosh and go talk to him. What did Mordechai do? Anybody know the story? He went out He went out into the street and he put on sackcloth and ash and he called Yidden to do tshuva. Mordechai was ma'oder Yidden to tshuva. He went to Esther afterwards. The first thing he did was he didn't have to do tshuva. And he gathered the children and he learned with them. And it was Makav Kehillas at that time to gather children together was suicide, because there were many other gezeras that they made, and one of the gezeras they made was Yidden are not allowed to learn Torah and do mitzvahs, and they're not allowed to gather in large groups. Haman could have killed every one of those 22,000 children, and the children, Mordechai said, run away, Haman's coming, and children, no, we're staying here. And if Haman wants to kill us, that's his business. Itanu itach, we're with you. Anu itach, we're with you, ben l'chaim ben l'mavis. Mordechai rallied Yidden for tshuva. Then he went to Esther HaMalka. And the essence of the tshuva was obviously about Avedis. There was a lot of assimilation. A lot of Jews were married to non-Jews in the time between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. That's why Ezra HaSefer had such a difficult time sifting out who was a kosher Yid and who was not a kosher Yid, who was a Yid and who was a Goy v'chulu. Like it says in the book of Ezra, which maybe you didn't get that far, but the boys don't even know what the Nach looks like, but you guys learn a little Navi, okay? But part of that tshuva was that the Yid has to clear out of his head this notion, oh, I'm so lucky the guy likes me, he shook my hand. We sat at the same table, he came to the same dinner. Okay? This is the story of Purim. So the tragedy was a tragedy of assimilation thought. The miracle then was we were made to appreciate our error with enough time that we're able to do tshuva, and it was reversed. Nobody died except Agog, Haman, his sons. 75,000 people from Amalek were killed in the war that took place a year later on the 13th and the 14th of Adar. But that's the true story of the Megillah. And that story is Negeya in every generation. It's Negeya now. You know, we're all Lubavitcher boys and girls. From Chassidish, right? Haimish. But when you're 17 or 18 and you're sitting on an airplane, there's a little part of you that thinks like the Yidden who went to that party. Some of you are thinking, oh, I wish I could be like them. And others think, I just had a 4-hour conversation with a shiksa girl who was going to college, and she was so friendly. She treated me like we're mamish equals. I felt so normal. Hey! That's the Purim story right there. I'm a guest. We forget that Hamavdil ben Kedesh lachei ben El lachei. What's the next words? Ben Yisrael la'amim. Ben Yisrael la'amim. Ben Yisrael la'amim is not because he gave us tzares. Ben Yisrael la'amim because a Yid and a Goy have a different nature. And when the Yid acts like a Yid, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Goy respects you. When the Yid says, Lo yichrav, Lo yishtachva, I'm not bowing down, that's the Nes of Purim. Mordechai refuses to bow. And on the surface, Mordechai's not bowing brought on the whole tzara in the first place. But it was Mordechai, Lo yichrav, Lo yishtachva, which brought the Nes. When a Yid says, I don't bow for a non-Jew. You know the story with the Rebbe? This is one of those stories that when you hear it, it's too good to be true, Pashat. It's not normal. You know the story? The Rebbe used to go visit his mother every single day at 6 o'clock. Before I was born, I have a hard time remembering it, but as I get older, it's coming back to me, you understand? Every day he would walk up Kingston Avenue to see his mother. The Rebbe was in 770, his mother was a president of Kingston. And the Rebbe used to walk up the street, and the Rebbe, everybody knew what time the Rebbe passed. It was 6 o'clock every day, in the afternoon, or the evening. So all the storekeepers would stand by the entrances to their store as the Rebbe would pass, and the Rebbe would greet each one. Most of those stores were Jews. Crown Heights in the olden days was so Jewish you have no idea. Anyway, the Rebbe passes a hat store, which was that little stretch. That hat store made the hats for all the Lubavitcher Chassidim, including the Rebbe's own hats. He used to custom make the Rebbe's hats. He knew the Rebbe well. Every day the Rebbe would pass him and he would tip his cap. The Rebbe would lower his head and touch the edge of his hat like a symbolic tip his cap. He's standing in front of the store and the Rebbe tips his cap, and there was an African-American mailman with his cart, you know, with the wheel cart that's in the mail. And the Rebbe sees him, the Rebbe smiles. The way the Rebbe smiled, the light, the sun just shone. And the Jewish hat store owner is thinking to himself, I get a tip of the cap and he gets a smile like that? That's not fair. I make all the hats for all of his Hasidim, make his own hat. I don't get a smile, I just get a tip of the cap. Anyway, the Rebbe went to see his mother and came back. On the way back, he was standing in front of the store again. The Rebbe walked up to him and told him in Yiddish, in my entire life, I never bent my head to a non-Jew. The Rebbe went like this. They went like this. They went like this. He lowered his head. In my entire life, I never bent my head to a non-Jew. Now, how crazy is that? How do you keep track? How do you even know who's Jewish? In my entire, ich hab keimlich my begin my cup to a nitid. That's the story of the Megillah. Mordechai. Mordechai doesn't bow. And on the surface, Mordechai is not bowing, causes all the trouble. But in the end, that's the ness. So the Purim story is not an ancient history. It's such a living story. And dafka, when Yidden are in the goals of Ashiris, when Yidden are in the goals like we are in, we're living in a country where we literally can say whatever we think. We can live whatever we want. We can do whatever we want. There's people are saying that there's an increase in anti-Semitism. And maybe that's true. The question is how we should react to it. Should we run around calling people anti-Semites? Or should, like my daughter-in-law says, bring them a pot of soup and see how anti-Semitic they are. They just want a little attention. Okay, but in our culture, the idea that Hamavdil ben Yisrael Ha'am, I say to you, boys and girls in Lubavitch and in Satmar and in Bobev and in Belz and in Lakewood, when you're young, you feel like, why do I have to be different? And you enjoy those moments when you sit with a guy and treat you like an equal, and you start to say, only if. Don't even think it. Because the Eibishter made this barrier between a Yid and a non-Yid, and it's impermeable. It cannot be breached. It will never be breached. Never. Never. And when we realize this, and we start to celebrate ourselves for who we are, then you have YEHUDI. Okay, I'll let you go 3 minutes early.